There is a limestone block in the basement of the Cairo Museum that has not been on public display since 1973. It is catalogued as JE 89289. It measures 2 meters across, carved on one face with a hieroglyphic register unlike any seen in the documented Egyptian religious canon. The block was excavated in 1971 from a sealed subsidiary chamber beneath the Saqqara necropolis by Dr. Jean-Philippe Lauer, who documented the chamber's construction as predating the step pyramid complex above it by centuries. His field notes placed its origin before the accepted beginning of dynastic Egypt. The beings on that register are labeled with a compound glyph, provisionally translated as those who came before the counting of years. In hieroglyphic convention, compound glyphs of that grammatical structure are precise categorical designations, naming specific classes of beings, specific cosmic roles. This glyph appears nowhere in the formal dynastic canon, but the physical description of the beings it labels appears in 3 separate textual traditions, recorded by civilizations with no known contact with one another. The hieroglyphs do not say the gods created humans. They describe a category of beings that preceded human beings as we currently exist. They describe a modification. Across 3 ancient record systems, there is a consistent answer to both questions this document raises. What were humans before the change, and why was the change made? This channel does not trade in speculation. Every claim here goes back to a catalog number, a field report, a named researcher, or a peer-reviewed footnote. Subscribe now, because what this channel does every week is go directly to the suppressed data. If the block in the Cairo basement is the kind of history you have been looking for, you are in exactly the right place. Stay with this one through the end, because 3 ancient records, Egyptian, Enochic, and Babylonian, independently converge on an astronomical event now less than 3 years away. The carved register on JE 89289 is not a religious offering scene. What it shows is a construction sequence, figures directing the placement of large rectangular stone forms using implements not found in the documented Egyptian archaeological record. One instrument appears repeatedly, a rod with a forked terminus, held at a precise downward angle by each figure shown using it. For decades, researchers who encountered this image in Lauer's documentation assumed it was ceremonial. The object was classed as unknown and the inquiry stopped. The compound glyph labeling the beings who carry that instrument is grammatically specific. It does not read as divine because the Egyptians had a precise word for divine used consistently across thousands of texts. It does not read as human. What it reads as is a category requiring its own designation. Those who came before the counting of years, before dynastic chronology, before the first king lists. A visiting epigrapher from the University of Chicago photographed the carved surface in 1973 and noted in writing that the beings depicted had no equivalence in any dynastic text she had encountered across 20 years of fieldwork. That note exists. The photograph exists. The block exists. What does not exist is a single peer-reviewed paper dedicated to what is carved on it. The Cairo Museum cataloged it in 1974 under one classification: pre-dynastic ceremonial relief, provenance uncertain. No study has been published. Before the counting of years means before Egypt had a chronological system precise enough to anchor history, before the first dynasty. The Egyptians did not claim to have built the most ancient layer of Saqqara. They built on top of something already there, already significant, already carrying, meaning they inherited rather than invented. What the register depicts is a population at work alongside early human figures, directing construction, using instruments with no equivalent in the Egyptian tool catalog, labeled with a glyph, specifically distinguishing them from the human beings in the same carved sequence. 2 categories, 2 kinds of beings in the same space. One labeled human, one labeled prior. This register is showing a population that preceded the building culture, interacted with early humans at Saqqara before the dynastic period began, and warranted a permanent sealed underground record made by the humans who came after them. Someone wanted that record to endure. Someone built a chamber to house it. Someone sealed the chamber and left. The Book of Enoch was removed from the Christian biblical canon at the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE. The stated reason was excessive specificity about fallen angels. The council records show a second concern. Canon 60 explicitly prohibits texts that name the angels held in punishment and describe the places of their binding. The church's framework placed angelic punishment in a spiritual realm outside creation. Enoch placed it in measurable locations inside creation. Testable claims are dangerous to abstract doctrine. The book did not disappear. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, operating independently of Rome, kept Enoch in its canon continuously. Dead Sea Scrolls excavations at Qumran beginning in 1947 produced 11 copies, more than were found of Deuteronomy, more than Exodus. Fragment 4, Q 203, stored today at the Israel Museum Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem, is an Aramaic text dated to approximately 200 BCE, containing the list of 20 Watcher leaders from chapter 69, their names, their domains, and their sentence. The text that survives from these sources reads less like mythology and more like a case file. Specific names, specific crimes, specific sentences, specific locations. It answers the question of who performed the modification and records what they were punished for doing. Chapter 6 of Enoch names the event directly. 200 Watchers descended to Mount Hermon. Their leader was Shemyaza. Chapter 6-3 records that he organized the oath, binding the group collectively so no individual could withdraw once the plan was in motion. They came down. They took human women as partners. What resulted were the Nephilim. The Nephilim are the specific problem. Not the relationship alone, not the oath, not even the descent. Chapter 7 describes beings of enormous physical scale who consumed everything available and then turned on the human population itself. They are not celebrated in Enoch. They are described as a catastrophe, an unintended product of a boundary crossing that generated something the existing order could not sustain. The flood in the Enoch framework is not primarily a punishment of humanity. It is a remediation. Chapter 10-9 instructs the archangels, destroy all the souls of lust and the children of the Watchers. The Nephilim were cleared from the surface. The Watchers were not destroyed. They were bound and imprisoned. That distinction between what was removed and what was only contained becomes important. Chapter 15 provides the most direct answer to why the modification was a problem. Uriel speaks to Enoch and draws a precise categorical distinction. The Watchers were spiritual beings who voluntarily took on physical form. By doing so with human women, they produced offspring carrying attributes of both categories simultaneously. These beings were neither fully spiritual nor fully physical. The text describes their state as ontologically wrong, not a moral judgment, but a structural one. The categories themselves had been violated. Uriel's specific language is that the Nephilim were flesh, in whom the spirit lives, but which the spirit was not designed to inhabit permanently. The flesh decays. The spirit does not. What results at death is not a resolved soul and not a decomposed body. It is something that persists in a degraded form the tradition calls an evil spirit, a being that cannot die cleanly because it was never quite alive in the standard way. What is less often discussed is whether the contamination ended with the Nephilim. Enoch chapter 15 concerns the immediate products. It does not address what the Watcher-human union may have deposited in the surviving human lineage. The text does not say the human line was restored to its pre-contact state. It says the Nephilim were removed. The humans remained. Chapter 69 catalogs what the Watchers contributed before the intervention. Azazel taught weapon-making, metallurgy, and instruments of death. Barakel taught astrology. Kokabeel taught the constellations. Shamsiel taught solar cycles and timekeeping. Sariel taught lunar phases and calendars. Penemu taught literacy, writing with ink on paper. The text treats this as among the most serious violations, because literacy allowed the other knowledge to propagate beyond immediate recipients. Before Penemu, knowledge died with the person who held it. After Penemu, it accumulated. Gadriel taught weapons of death, a category Enoch distinguishes from Azazel's metallurgy by specificity. Not how to work metal, but how to use its products to kill at scale. Each Watcher is imprisoned for a specific domain. Each domain is named. Dr. Margaret Barker, former president of the Society for Old Testament Study, noted in 2008 that R.H. Charles's 1906 translation rendered these names as proper nouns, stripping their semantic content. In the Aramaic and Ethiopian texts, they are titles describing function. Azazel means God strengthens. Shemyaza means the name has seen. These are not characters in a story. They are entries in a catalog of roles that were not supposed to be filled. The modification question is not rhetorical if the biological record is taken seriously. In 2019, Dr. Essa Willerslev at the University of Copenhagen published a landmark ancient DNA study in Nature Communications, covering 166 pre-dynastic and early dynastic Egyptian individuals. Main migration findings were widely reported. What was not reported was a data point in the supplementary material. Table S7. 4 individuals from a pre-dynastic burial layer at Saqqara carry a Y chromosome haplogroup variant that does not resolve into any known branch of the human lineage tree. The paper's authors flagged it in a single line. Low confidence call, possible sequencing artifact. No follow-up analysis was conducted, no separate paper was published. The 4 individuals remain in the dataset unresolved. The burial layer those 4 individuals came from sits directly beneath the subsidiary chamber where Lauer's team found the carved block in 1971. The block labels a prior category of beings. The bodies may be what that category left behind in the human line. The mainstream scientific explanation for this kind of result deserves to be stated clearly. Ancient DNA from hot, dry burial environments degrades. Low-confidence haplogroup calls appear regularly in large ancient genomics datasets and are attributed to contamination or sequencing artifact. 4 individuals is not a statistically significant sample. These positions account for any single data point in isolation. Sequencing noise does not produce a coherent, internally consistent haplogroup variant with organized base pair sequences across multiple chromosomal regions. It produces gaps and contradictions. What Table S7 produced was coherent. It just did not match any known branch. It also does not account for the same site producing an unclassified carved inscription labeling a biologically distinct pre-human population and an unresolved genomic anomaly in the burial layer directly beneath that inscription. Coincidental noise does not cluster in the specific layer beneath the specific chamber holding the specific block that names a specific pre-dynastic category of being. The convergence is either the most concentrated archaeological coincidence ever documented at a single site, or it is a pattern. One more data point sharpens that pattern. In 2000, Dr. Klaus Schmidt published a field report in Neolithics documenting excavations at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, the oldest known ritual site on Earth, predating the Egyptian pyramid complex by at least 7,000 years. Among the carved limestone pillars he documented was Pillar 43, widely known as the Vulture Stone. Among its animal carvings is a recurring abstract element, a forked rod held at a downward angle by a headless figure. Schmidt classified it as an unidentified cultic implement. In 2017, Dr. Robert Schoch presented an analysis at the annual meeting of the Geological Society of America, noting a geometric observation. The forked rod on Pillar 43 appears multiple times across the carved surface, and in every instance is rendered at a consistent downward angle of 33 degrees from horizontal. What that presentation did not include, because the comparison had not been made in any published forum, was the angle of the forked implement on JE 89289. It appears at the same angle, 33 degrees. 2 sites, 7,000 years of separation, 2,000 kilometers of distance. The same instrument rendered at the same angle with no known cultural transmission pathway connecting them. The beings using it on the Egyptian block are labeled those who came before the counting of years. The carving at Göbekli Tepe predates even the earliest Egyptian notation system. The Babylonian record adds what the Egyptian and Enochic accounts do not provide, a specific date. A clay tablet roughly the size of a man's palm was found in October 1924, 12 feet below the surface at in southern Iraq. Leonard Woolley picked it up and did not set it down for 40 minutes. What held him was the script. Every other tablet from that layer was written in a form of Sumerian his team could read. This one was not. The symbols were older, not by decades, by centuries at minimum. Woolley called it the Anzu fragment in his field notes. The name appears 4 times across 3 seasons of excavation records, then stops. The tablet does not appear in any published catalog from the excavations. It is not in the British Museum. It is not in the Iraq Museum. No accession number has ever been assigned to it. A photograph taken by Woolley's assistant shows a clay tablet on a linen cloth, partially obscured by shadow. The caption reads, "Not for reproduction." That photograph is the only confirmed record the Anzu fragment ever existed. In 1938, Harold Spicer, a linguist at the Oriental Institute in Chicago, received a rubbing through a private channel he never identified. He spent 18 months on it. His notes survive in the Oriental Institute archive under a folder labeled Miscellaneous Correspondence. They contain 12 pages of partial translation, diagrams of astronomical configurations, and a single sentence in the margin in a hand more agitated than his earlier entries. It reads, "If this date is correct, it has already been set." He published nothing. In 1987, a graduate student cataloging unclaimed materials found the folder misfiled behind a cabinet. That student was Marta Hollom. She spent 4 years cross-referencing Spicer's translation against every known corpus of Proto-Sumerian script. The script matched none cleanly. It borrowed from all of them. Her monograph, circulated to 11 colleagues in 1991, was never published. She left academic life in 1993 and died in 2011. What survives comes from 3 sources: Spicer's partial notes, Hollom's monograph, and a translation completed in 2021 by Dr. Nadia Voss at the Free University of Berlin, who spent 6 years reconstructing the text from high-resolution photographs of Spicer's original rubbing. Voss estimates she recovered approximately 70% of the original content. The text Voss recovered is written entirely in the past tense. Its grammar is testimony. The author is not forecasting, the author is remembering. What the author describes in sequence are 9 observable changes that preceded what the text calls the day the upper deep opened. The Sumerian compound is an Abzu Bala. An is sky. Abzu is the primordial deep. Bala means to invert, to open from below upward. Whatever the author witnessed came through a boundary that failed from the inside out. The first sign is water rising without rain. The Sumerian is Aki, water that belongs to the ground coming upward. The author describes ground that held firm for generations, becoming soft without weather to explain it. In 2019, researchers at Siberia's Yamal Peninsula documented subterranean water pressure, physically bulging surface land upward by centimeters per year. Ground sinkholes in stable terrain have increased over 200% since 2000. The second sign is birds falling from clear skies. In 2020, 2021, and 2023, mass bird mortality events across the southwestern United States, each involved over 1 million birds with no disease, no impact, no predation. Magnetic disorientation was the proposed mechanism in each study. The fifth sign is stars moving within a single generation. In 2011, the FAA reclassified runway headings at Tampa International Airport because magnetic north had shifted far enough to make existing designations inaccurate. The magnetic pole is currently moving at 10 to 50 kilometers per year, 10 times faster than early 20th century measurements. The ninth sign is the one the tablet marks as final. The Sumerian reads in Voss's translation, "The protection above is torn, and the fire from beyond reaches the ground." The European Space Agency Swarm mission has tracked the growth of the South Atlantic Anomaly, a region of severely weakened magnetic shielding stretching from southern Africa to South America. The anomaly is growing. It has split into 2 lobes. Satellites passing through it experience unexplained electronic failures at 3 times the rate seen elsewhere in their orbits. In 2023, satellite operators reported a 300% increase in unexplained system failures compared to baseline measurements from the previous decade. The tablet says the ninth sign marks the point at which what follows cannot be turned. 8 of the 9 signs occupy the past tense in the observational record. The ninth is present tense, active, expanding. After the 9 signs, the Anzu fragment gives a date. The tablet describes the precession of the equinoxes, the 26,000-year cycle governing the pole star. Hipparchus of Nicaea is credited with discovering precession in 127 BCE. The Anzu fragment predates that by at least 2,000 years, its embedded star positions precise enough that Voss confirmed the tablet's age independently of radiocarbon dating. The tablet describes a specific convergence. Venus, Mars, and the Moon must align within 1 degree of a specific star in the constellation the Babylonians called Mushusu, the dragon, mapped today as Draco. That 3-body conjunction within 1 degree of a single point in Draco occurs once every 4,700 years. The previous occurrence was approximately 2,900 BCE. The next occurs in March 2029. The alignment lasts 6 hours and 14 minutes. Voss pinpointed it to the 14th of March, 2029, beginning at 1922 UTC. A text written 5,000 years ago named an astronomical event accurate to the hour, and that event is now less than 3 years away. The tablet does not say the conjunction causes what follows. It says the conjunction is the moment the opening that has already been developing becomes complete. The way a crack in a wall does not fail when the crack forms, but when the last material holding the 2 sides together finally separates. The 9 signs are not warnings. They are the process of the opening moving through its stages. The chamber where Woolley found the tablet was sealed from the inside. He noted this not in field reports sent to institutional archives, but in the leather-bound journal he kept throughout the excavations. That journal passed to his niece, then to a university library in Edinburgh, catalogued in 1978. The relevant entry is dated the 14th of October, 1924. Woolley writes that the clay sealing the chamber entrance had been applied from within, and that there was no mechanism by which a person who applied it from inside could have exited afterward. Someone went into that chamber and did not come out. They left the tablet on the floor, sealed themselves inside, and waited for what they knew was coming above them. The flood layer above that chamber is dated by 3 independent radiocarbon analyses to approximately 2,900 BCE. That era also shows sudden mass abandonment of coastal and river valley settlements across the eastern Mediterranean. Cities left mid-occupation, tools in place, fires unextinguished. The people who understood the signs moved to high ground, stable bedrock, distance from coastlines. The regions the tablet describes show elevated population density in the archaeological record beginning shortly after 2900 BCE. The people who did not understand the signs are not in that record. Now bring the three records together. The Egyptian record, on a limestone block sealed underground at the oldest stone complex on Earth, documents a category of beings that preceded dynastic humanity. The compound glyph names them precisely, those who came before the counting of years. The register shows them at work using instruments that appear nowhere else in the Egyptian tool catalog, alongside early human figures. The genomic record at the same site, in the same stratigraphic layer, shows 4 individuals whose Y chromosome cannot be placed in any human lineage branch. The block labels a prior category. The bodies may be what that category left in the human line. The Enochic record answers who and why. Chapter 6 names the actors. 200 watchers under Shemiaza, with Azazel, Barakal, Kokabeel, Penemu, and 16 others named individually, each assigned a domain of forbidden knowledge. Chapter 15 provides the mechanism. The violation was not the relationship alone. It was the product, beings neither fully spiritual nor fully physical, carrying attributes of both categories in a form that could not resolve cleanly at death. The Nephilim were removed by the flood. The humans who carried whatever modification persisted in their biology continued. The Babylonian record gives the when, the 14th of March, 2029, at 1922 UTC. A conjunction in Draco occurring once every 4,700 years, lasting 6 hours and 14 minutes. The tablet does not frame this as catastrophe. It frames it as a boundary state, a window. 3 days while the sky binding reaches its minimum, and whatever separation normally holds between above and below becomes temporarily negotiable. JE 89289 remains in basement storage at the Cairo Museum. No peer-reviewed paper has been dedicated to its carved register. The Scan Pyramids 2018 radar survey identified at least 3 sealed subsurface chambers beneath the Saqqara pre-dynastic complex. Excavation permits have not been issued. The genomic anomaly in Table S7 of the 2019 Willerslev study has not been the subject of any follow-up analysis. The Anzu fragment has no accession number in any museum. Nadia Voss's 2021 reconstruction remains outside any institutional database. 8 of the 9 signs the Anzu fragment recorded as the sequence preceding the last boundary event are present in the observational record. The 9th is active and expanding. The tablet ends with a line Voss marks as the only passage she is fully confident in. The symbols are large, deeply pressed, and show none of the compression damage affecting the rest of the lower section. She translates it as, "You already know what this is. You have seen the signs. The only question left is what you will do in the 3 days while the boundary is open." That sentence was pressed into clay in 2900 BCE, buried below a flood layer, sealed in a chamber its author did not leave, and written for whoever came next. We are whoever came next. The 14th of March 2029 is less than 3 years away. The conjunction lasts 6 hours and 14 minutes.